and then right and away round the bluff at Exmüller. Lap 10 sees another Fangio lap record, 9 minutes, 29.5 seconds, and look how he throws it into the carousel. And Hawthorne chases Collins, who's taken second place. Musso pouring it on. And then Tony Brooks in the bad handling Van Wall. Fangio's lead has now increased to 28 seconds. But will it be enough? Lap 12 at the Nurburgring, 1957. And Fangio heads his leading lightweight Maserati into the pits. Can he rejoin and keep in contact with the non-stop Lancia Ferraris now catching up fast? Bertocchi on the filler. A knockoff hub nut spins back on. But watch that far side mechanic. He's lost the hub nut. Let's see that again. First of all, he takes the hub nut off and removes the worn tar, throwing it away. Then he brings in the fresh wheel and tar, fits it onto the hub, but the hub nut has spun away under the car. Well, we've always known this pit stop was bungled, but this truly historic footage now shows us exactly why it happened. Meanwhile, Hawthorne and Collins storm by into a handsome lead. They've both seen Fangio in the pits and know they've got to put some distance between themselves and him if either of them are to win this Grand Prix. At last, Fangio rejoins. His bungled stop has taken 52 seconds. He's now third, 45 seconds behind the Lancia Ferraris. He knows they've gone by and the adrenaline is rushing. We're about to see what a true maestro could achieve. Fangio is chasing hard. Lap 16, the gap is 33 seconds. Next lap, it's 25.5. Verstappen, Hawthorne and Collins flat out in their powerful Lancia Ferrari V8s. Fangio's still neat, but even faster. First 0.4 off the lap record, then another 3.2 seconds off. On lap 19, Fangio takes another 1.9 off his lap record. The Formula 2 Porsches keep circulating. The Lancia Ferraris round the carousel. Followed closely by Fangio the Hunter. His blood's up. He can't see him yet, but he knows he's close. The gap is 13.5 seconds. Musso in fourth place. And Moss with the bouncing Van Wall, fifth. Beira is back up to sixth. And Harry Schell running seventh. And through the south curve, Hunted and Hunter rip away into their 20th lap. Hawthorne, Collins and Fangio now visibly working hard. He's wringing every drop of performance available from his Maserati. At the end of the straight, just short of the pits, it's fantastic. Fangio is right with the two Ferraris. He's lapped in 9 minutes 17.4. That's 24.2 seconds inside his 56 lap record. And in the south curve, Mike's sliding wide. Collins is in tight, and the old man is third and eating them alive. Behind the pits to the north curve, he's diving down the inside under braking on Collins' inside. He's through! He's through into second place. Yes, here at Verstappen, it's Fangio. Fangio leads across the Adenauer Bridge. The German race marshals wave in homage to one of history's greatest drives. Hawthorne hangs on in second place. And Gregory in the white Maserati has been lapped, whilst Collins has fallen back. Edgar Barth leads the Formula 2 class since Salvadoris Cooper has broken its suspension. These 1600cc Porsches treat the Grand Prix like a 24-hour race. They just run and run. And at the carousel for the last time, the crowds acknowledge the maestro's finest race. But Hawthorne still hasn't given up. He's giving it all he's got. But poor Pete Collins' clutch is frozen, one goggle lens is smashed, so he's settled for third. Fangio takes the flag, winning his 24th and final Grand Prix and the Drivers' World Championship for the 5th time, the 4th in successive years. As he pulls in through the gate at the end of the pits, Mike Hawthorne, hatless, draws alongside, and look at the smile on his face. Look at that reception. Adriana, Fangio's wife, is ready with a kiss, and the ecstatic Maserati mechanics with more. They shoulder their champion to the victory dais. The British boys show how to lose with grace. They're delighted for the old boy, as they call him. Ugolini kisses Hawthorne, and Collins joins the party. Fangio's greatest drive is history. He's just become world champion driver for the 5th time, a record still unbeaten. The remarkable footage we've just seen remained hidden away in German archive cans for nearly 40 years. Only recently recovered, it stands today as a monument to a time when the finest virtues of amateur sport could still prevail, even at the most professional level of Grand Prix competition. On that August day in 1957, Hawthorne and Collins knew they'd brought out the very best in arguably the greatest racing driver the world has ever seen. As Peter Collins himself put it later that same evening, Mike and I finished first and second in the class for mere mortals. This wasn't a thing we could do to deny the old boy today. Sadly, true sportsmanship may be an outmoded concept now, but there's little denying the honour and gallantry of a less cynical era. I'm Alan Academy. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll join me next time for more Legends of Motorsport.
A period during which many changes took place in the world of motor racing. There had been a World Championship race back in January in Argentina, and the Van Wall team, who couldn't afford to travel all that way, released Sterling Moss to drive Rob Walker's little Cooper there. He won, ahead of Musso and Hawthorne in Ferraris, and Fangio, Berra and Schell in Maseratis. So a rear-engine car had won a Grand Prix for the first time since the days of Auto Union before the war. Rob Walker had become the first private entrant to win a World Championship race, and Sterling Moss led the World Championship. There was a new rule preventing drivers from switching cars during a race. Race distances had been reduced from 500 kilometers to 300. And most important of all, alcohol-based fuels had been banned in favor of avgas, the high-octane aeroplane fuel. Van Wall's drivers would be the same as they had been for that famous win at Monza last year: Moss, Brooks and Lewis Evans. They had fitted the now traditional truncated noses, the better to cope with Monaco's notorious traffic jams, and some new magnesium alloy wheels. But they'd experienced difficulty converting the engine to run on petrol, and there was a question mark over Van Wall's reliability. Although the Maserati Works team was gone, there were no less than 6 private 250Fs on the entry list, which contained a total of 29 cars fighting for just 16 places on the grid. There were Works Maserati mechanics on hand to look after the customers' cars. Louis Chiron, the veteran French ace, who won here for Bugatti in 1931, was on hand with his usual well-illustrated advice. The rules may have changed, but the round the houses circuit of 1.9 miles, viewed from above the gasworks hairpin, had changed not one jot. The third practice session was from 3 until 4:30, and I joined the Walker pit. Rob had entered 2 Coopers. Ron Flockhart, who had been released by BRM as they only had 2 available cars for their 3 drivers, would handle the Argentine winning car. And then there was a brand new car for Maurice Trintignant with ZF gearbox and Alf Francis designed coil spring rear suspension. Brooks had been fastest in the previous sessions, and sensationally, because of delays and a rain shower in the latter half of Friday's practice, Sterling Moss had yet to qualify. The BRMs were running well, and Berra, new to the team, having moved from Maserati, had been as quick as Brooks in the first session. Brooks held on to pole position in van wheel number 30, with Behra a second slower, but still on the middle of the front row. Ferrari had now forsaken their old Lancia design and had the new 246 with a V6 Dino engine. Their four drivers, Von Trips in car 40, Hawthorne in 38, Collins in 36, and Musso in 34. The fastest of them was Hawthorne, but he was still only on the third row of the grid. With no Works Maserati team to drive for, world champion Fangio had gone off to Indianapolis for the month, and somehow, without him, the private 250Fs looked slow and distinctly old-fashioned. In the event, only two would qualify, Scarlatti and Bonnier, 14th and 16th fastest of the 16 qualifiers. Roy Salvadori qualified 4th fastest in the Works Coupe. His teammate, Jack Brabham, was 3rd fastest with the other Works car. Its Climax engine, newly stretched to 2.2 litres, had been collected by John Cooper from Nice Airport and carried back to the circuit on the rear seat of a Citroën de Chevaux. Team Lotus were now a proper Grand Prix racing team and had two of their front-engine Mark 12 cars, number 26 for Graham Hill and 24 for Cliff Allison. Both had 2-litre Climax engines and both would qualify. Finally, Moss got a good time in his van wheel, 1 minute 42.3, which may only have been 8th quickest, but at least he was in the race. Tony Vanderbilt could breathe again. And as I looked at the grid sheet, I realized that the revolution has indeed arrived. There are 7 British cars in the top 8. Favourite Ferrari were only 6th, 9th and 10th fastest. The front row on the morrow would be Brooks Vanwell, Behra BRM and Brabham Cooper. On the second row, the Works 2-litre Cooper of Roy Salvadori and the private Rob Walker car in the hands of Maurice Trenchard. Then came Hawthorne's Ferrari, alongside the other 2 van wheels of Moss and Lewis Evans, and behind them the rest of Scuderia Ferrari, Collins, Musso and Von Trips. Then came Harry Schell, disappointingly slow in the second BRM, and Allison's Lotus. Scarlatti would line up alongside Hill in the second Lotus, and all alone in the back would be Joe Bonnier in a second private Maserati. 10 British cars, 4 Ferraris, 2 Maseratis. How times are changing. Notable amongst the non-qualifiers were the 2 Connaughts, now bought from the defunct Connaught factory by a certain Mr. Bernie Eccleston, and driven by Paul Emery and Bruce Kessler. Although Ron Flockhart had failed to qualify his second car, Rob and Betty Walker were looking calm as the start time approached. The little Cooper, to be driven by Maurice Trintignant, was to start from the second row. The BRM team, with their 2 drivers, Jean Behra, who would start from the middle of the front row, and Harry Schell, disappointingly, from somewhere near the back. The fancied Ferrari team, with their new 246 Dinos, had not impressed in practice. Quickest had been Mike Hawthorne, the Farnham Flyer, as he's known, in car number 38, but 5 British cars had set quicker times. Hawthorne would be supported by his teammate Peter Collins, the new German promise Taffy Von Trips, and Roman heartthrob Luigi Musso. The Vanwell team had had mixed fortunes in practice. Brooks had been brilliant to take pole position, but it had taken until the dying moments of the third session for Moss to actually qualify. He and Lewis Evans were on the third row with Hawthorne. Maserati, having withdrawn as a Works team, were looking after 2 250Fs for Scarlatti and Bonnier, neither of whom were exactly setting the track alight.